Hey guys, it's Miko from MO Sound Lab, and this is an unreleased plugin. Should we release it or not? Okay, last year I actually made a video about this plugin. It's a project that we sort of put on the back burner. It's not our main focus, but it's more of a passion project for me. The way I mix is that I actually don't mix that much, but what I want to have control over is some of the most important frequencies and obviously saturation, compression, clipping, all that amazing stuff, but I want to have that as high quality as possible, and I have very specific plugins that I love for each of these tasks, and I wanted to have all those different plugins in one UI, and that is what this is. So this is MO Sound Lab's Wave Breaker. I'm not sure if this is even gonna be the name when this thing comes out, but hey, you'll get an insider look at what we're working on right now. Now, Wave Breaker, the name was actually decided before Waves did all their weird stuff, so I understand how this name can now seem like it's some sort of a stab against Waves. It's not. It's all just about how audio waves can be broken, sort of like real waves. When waves break, you get that white foam on top of the wave. So this UI actually gives you sort of a wave that you start breaking with different processes. So we have an extremely high quality saturation, which is the same saturation algo that we have on MO drums. So that is odd harmonics mostly. So that makes everything just sound fatter. So that is the high quality sort of saturation that you'll find in plugins like, what is that, Iron plugin by Casrock, or FabFilter's Saturn has, I think it's their highest quality kind of a saturation that I use a lot. So this is pretty much identical to those. It's not that complicated to do actually. Then we have 3 different compressors that are based on my favorite compressors that I use in the plugin format. So Punch is based on essentially the Wave CLA 1176, but it's not the exact same thing. It's concentrating on the punch of that, and it's a 1-knob compressor, so it's not identical, obviously. Glue is based on actually 2 different compressors. The SSL bus compressor, but even more than that, it's more like the Townhouse compressor by Brainworks. So this is probably the most transparent compressor that you can find on the market. Many times, if you push it really hard, you can't even hear that there's compression on the track. So that is why it's so amazing. It just makes everything fit together and glue together. Then the limit is more like Waves L2 or FabFilter's L2, all the different L2 plugins out there. Then we have the clipping, which is, I think, identical to something like Isotope Ozone's mastering clippers on their hardest setting. And then we have a normalizing knob that doesn't actually work yet. So this is still work in progress. It's not ready. When I started using this, I realized that we need different things in here that are not in here yet. Now the EQ, I actually talked about this before, but this is based on all my favorite things for EQ. So if you turn down the sub, you're actually getting a low cut that is like an SSL type low cut. You're boosting this, you actually get a Pultec low end boost. Then this is also kind of an SSL type EQ for the low end. If you boost this, you get more of the snare low end. If you cut this, you're cutting out the muddy low mid frequencies out of guitars. Very subtle and very, very powerful. Mid range, likewise, is boosting and cutting the magic frequencies, different frequencies by the way. If you cut it, it's lower. If you boost it, it's higher. So if you want to get, for example, the vocals to have that nasal cut, just boost this up and you'll get that vocal sitting on top of the mix very easily. If you have kind of a cardboardy guitar sound and you turn this down, you get rid of that ugly sound essentially. High is essentially a very precisely fine-tuned Q on 4K. So this is probably the most powerful control here, because this is what starts to sound the worst for human ears when you have volume super high. So what you want to do is have your volume as high as you possibly can on your sound system, and then fine tune the high end 4K to be where your ears are not bleeding. Then the air, once you push it up, it's actually a Neve style high boost, kind of a tone boost. So you get a very natural, cool sounding presence. When you turn this down, you actually have an SSL style high cut. Okay, that's all. I'm just gonna play this track, which is the same track that you heard in our previous video, which is the main promotional track for MO Sound Labs Black November. So yes, everything is currently 50% off in our store. Go check out what's out there. What you're hearing here is our main default presets for our plugins with no mixing. It's extremely easy for you to get this sound. Just get the plugins. For bass, I'm using Amped Bass. Guitar is Amped Blackout, our newest release, default preset. That is the guitar sound. And the drums is ML Drums Grit, default preset. Very simple. And no volume balancing even, so that is pretty cool. So let's have a listen to the compression first. This is right now using sort of a Waves L2 or a Fab Filter L2 on kind of a, let's say, a slow setting. So this will pump, unlike the clipping will not pump. So you're sort of getting two different sorts of limiting here that you use for different purposes. Right now I'm barely touching the clipping here, and this is the volume that I actually have it on, so I'm not going to touch it that much. But what you want to pay attention to is that waveform and the wave that you are breaking here. So when you see white, that is what you are taking away from that wave. So pausing it like that. So as you can tell, when you have a big transient, you are actually cutting some volume out, even from this bit that is not a part of the transient. So this is a slow limiter. And the purpose for using something like this is to add impact. Right now, I don't think this track needs it. So I'm not going to be using that form of compression. This is on the master bus, by the way, so everything is going through this. Now Punch, like I said, is our sort of 1176 style compressor, so let's have a listen to that. So it does that impact thing even more and is very aggressive and even adds a tiny bit of saturation to it. So if you just listen to the drums, just have a listen to how angry and aggressive they sound now. So once again, pausing the waveform so I can show you what it's actually doing. So unlike the limiter, which was kind of a slow setting, this is a faster setting. So you are kind of grabbing the transients of the punch of the drums here and adding more aggression to it and making it lower in volume in relation to, for example, overheads and stuff like that. So what you're actually getting is a super aggressive sound, punchy, at a lower volume. So that is why this kind of compressor is the most important compressor in the world. And what I feel is very confusing for most people is that even though an 1176 style compressor is actually a one knob input volume compressor, when you get one of those plugins, you have like 5 or 6 or 7 different controls that basically do nothing. So what is amazing about this kind of a plugin is that you just have one knob, you don't have to worry about all the other stuff. Now, glue is my favorite form of compression, where it's so inaudible. These two different settings that I showed you before here, you can definitely hear that there's compressor on things, but the glue one is almost identical with Rainworks, Townhouse, SSL Comp-ish. Let's just have a listen to what that sounds like. A little bit difficult to explain why this is so amazing, but I'll try my best. So, with this kind of transparent glue compressor, pay attention to how much I'm actually compressing here. So that's like 20 dB of added compression. And the lower parts are the same in volume, but what I'm touching is the transient, and pay close attention to how it's maintaining the transient. It's not messing with the transient at all. This is the same exact transient, just lower in volume in relation to the low volume parts. So this glue compressor it's probably what I use the most. This is perfect for bus compression, like if you have like a mix that is already done and you want to use a compressor for mastering and stuff like that, then this glue one is perfect for that. Just gonna make everything a little bit less dynamics, but it's not gonna touch the transients too much. It's gonna be very transparent. Okay, let's have a listen to the saturation. Like I said, it's odd harmonics mostly, the kind of harmonics that you actually want. So they're not gonna start to fuzz up your sound. It's more just gonna add something around it, more heft, make everything sound fatter. So let's just have a listen to the drums and what they do to the drums. So already this tiny amount of saturation made the drum sound much more impactful and aggressive. So you don't have to use it a lot. Maybe this is something that we will fine tune because this is already a lot of saturation, but you have a lot on tap. So let's have a listen to how far this goes. It sounds amazing, but it's a lot of saturation. But it stays kind of put because it is odd harmonics. It's not adding that fuzzy, nasty character in there. Let's see what's maximum saturation. Maybe you'd use that for a lo-fi thing. Let's listen to the bass with just the saturation here. That's kind of a very natural sounding amount of saturation. It's actually a lot of saturation, but for the bass guitar, it was actually capable of making it sound fuller and fatter, more compressed, all the good stuff. Let's see what is maximum saturation for bass. It still sounds very good, and that, in my opinion, is kind of like an Iron Maiden or even like a nu metal type of a bass sound where you're not actually adding that nasty distortion necessarily, but you do have that saturation and all the amazing harmonic goodness that you get out of saturation. It's a very good sounding EQ. None of these controls, even if you boost it to extreme settings, none of these settings will be like ear piercing or anything like that. They are very natural and amazing sounding, so you can really calmly just use them to get the sound that you want and not worry about it too much. I'll quickly demonstrate this by actually EQing kind of like a master EQ setting for the entire track, which by the way was not on the official Black November track, but I'm gonna do it here anyways. So if I was like a mastering engineer, this is that kind of an EQ that you want to use. Obviously you can be super precise with your moves, but these are very safe EQ moves. So let's have a listen to what I would do. So that's it. As you can see, I maybe spent a minute on it. Very minor moves, but let's just now hear for the difference between having Wavebreaker and not having Wavebreaker. Just a minute on Wavebreaker, what it can do to your mix. This is with Wavebreaker off. Maybe I went a little bit far with the 4K, but it didn't sound bad. So it's not really, it's more of a taste thing. Let's just fine-tune that a little bit. More like that. So, once again, first with Wavebreaker. Tiny volume difference there, but really the main point that I'm trying to get across is when you're doing mixing, many times you see ego mixing, and I'm sure you've seen some of the EQ curves that people are adding to guitar tracks where they have essentially FabFilter Pro Q with like 50 different tiny EQ tweaks here and there for the guitar tracks, and when I see those things, I'm just thinking like no pro, real pro would ever do that, even though I'm talking about professional mixers, by the way. Anyways, like a real good EQ, if you think about analog EQ and stuff like that, it wasn't that kind of EQ. And if you really feel like you want to EQ that much, maybe just change the guitar sound. I mean, you don't have to use that guitar sound if you hate it so much that you have to add like 50 different tiny EQ things. Right here, as you can see, I'm not even going to be using a graphic EQ. Like, you're not going to visually see what I'm doing. That is the whole purpose of this. I mean, you have the visual cues here, and that's all you need. After that, you use your ears and not just go in there like, oh, there's a peak here in the EQ curve, so I have to mess with it. That is, in my opinion, noob and fail, even though you are the pro and I'm not, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. This kind of wide, safe EQ for adding flavor is, in my opinion, so much more cooler. And if you have a problem that you want to mix with EQ, maybe go back and change the guitar sound. You are working in the amp sim industry, and time and age, most likely you have a DI signal there. Change the IR, change the amp sim, do something like that, and don't just go crazy with the EQ settings. This is more what you want to be doing to make everything work together. Okay, back to topic. Man, that was a rant, by the way. This plugin, I don't know what we're gonna do with it. It's looking like this at the moment. Do you even like the way it looks, or is it meh? We can still do all sorts of things to it, but this is kind of how I imagined it being. I think it works pretty well, but it needs things like normalizing the knob doesn't work, and if the normalizing goes on, I actually want to see the LUFS and stuff like that for that, and you know, things like that. Maybe I want to have control over if the EQ is everything up here or post it, things like that. Let me know what you want to see in here. Would love to hear feedback before we start working on this again. This is where it is at the moment. I think it's pretty cool looking. I think it works really well, as you saw in this demonstration. And that's essentially it. I've been Mikko from MO Sound Lab. The plug here is that Black November, it's on right now. Everything in our store is 50% off. Go get it right now. See you on the next one. Bye bye.